Good morning, everyone. How we doing? Yeah, you ready for this? As Nicholas said, my name's Cebulski. I'm the Senior Vice President of Content and Creator Development. It's basically a very long title, and people always ask, what does it mean? And the truth of the matter is, I really don't even know what that means. But basically what I do at Marvel is a lot of the talent scouting. Travel city to city and country to country looking for talent. And as I've been with Marvel for such a long time, I've kind of become the go-to guy for anything anyone needs with Marvel, especially with our relationship with Disney, who acquired us almost 3 years ago. It's been a wonderful relationship, and one that's had me interact with all the different international offices, including the one here in Singapore. So I'm the guy that they come to when they have any questions about anything Marvel related. So what we're going to speak about today is a little bit of Marvel's content, how we go into creating our characters, how we go into creating some of our products, from comics to animation to film. And one of the ways I found out it's best to give you a look at how we create our characters is to give you a look at where we came from. So what I'm going to do first is go through a little bit of the history of Marvel, touch on a couple of the milestones in our path to becoming kind of the global entertainment house that we have become. Oh, there's me. Sorry about that. Marvel was not known as Marvel at first. Martin launched Marvel Comics in October of 1939. At this point, though, the Human Torch, Kazar, these people weren't considered superheroes. Who we attribute the first superhero to being is Captain America. This was in 1941. 20 years we kept publishing Captain America. Still Marvel Comics continued. Eventually, the company changed, so Timely Comics was changed to the name Marvel Comics, and a young writer who was working for Marvel at the time was coming up in the ranks, was hired to take on a specific title, which was Amazing Fantasy, and that writer's name was Stan Lee. Amazing Fantasy 15 was where Spider-Man debuted, and there's an interesting story behind this. Stan and Steve Ditko created the character of Spider-Man. They took it to Martin Goodman, who was still the publisher at this time, now a company known as Marvel Comics. Martin hated the idea. He said, no. He's like, no one is going to want to read a story about a hero, about any character who's dressed as a bug. You squash bugs. You don't idolize bugs. And Stan said, no, this story's special. I guarantee it. And he explained the story of Peter Parker, about Aunt May, about where he saw the hero going, how it's something you'd never seen in comic books before in this growing superhero genre. And Martin still said no. So Stan bet his career on this. He said, please, you don't have to give us a whole issue, just give us room for a short story, and I'll show you that Spider-Man will be a hit with the fans. So Martin took the bet. Stan put his career on the line, and they gave Stan and Steve Ditko 8 pages in Amazing Fantasy 15 to tell the story of Spider-Man. The issue came out, unprecedented fan response. There was a huge letter writing campaign. Everybody loved Spider-Man. And the rest, as they say, is history. Stan kept his job, the superhero genre took off, and that was what we consider the birth of the Marvel age of comics. So many of the titles you see here have gone on to become films. You have the Fantastic Four, the first family of Marvel Comics, the Incredible Hulk, Daredevil. Strange Tales introduced a character called Doctor Strange, who was the master of mysticism. Here we have Journey into Mystery, which is where we first saw the character Thor. Tales of Suspense was a book where we debuted Iron Man. And then, of course, the X-Men, the group of teen heroes feared and hated for their powers. And what became the defining kind of calling card of the Marvel universe and during this Marvel age was the fact that these stories, while they are about beings with superpowers who wear masks and fight crime, that wasn't what they were all about. The Marvel heroes are more about the human than the superhuman. It was more about the people who were under the masks. It was about the heart and the lives and the realism of the characters that inhabited these amazing costumes. You had Peter Parker, Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, Steve Rogers, many of these characters became household names. And it's a philosophy that we still live up to this day, is that you're telling stories about real people who wear superhero costumes. Their superhero lives come second. It's just about the emotional drama of their real lives, about Peter's relationship with his Aunt May, about Tony Stark's relationship with Pepper Potts, about Bruce Banner's fight with the monster inside him. It's about real struggles that everyday people who read these comics can relate to. And that has long been the appeal of Marvel Comics. Stan once said, the Marvel Universe is the world outside your window. And it's something we still hold up to this day. We want people to pick up one of our comics and feel like it's the world that they live in. That's why most of our books are set in New York. They're set in Los Angeles. It's not like the DC universe where Batman lives in Gotham or Superman lives in Metropolis, which are fictional cities. Our stories are set in the actual real world. Obama is the president in our world. You see many celebrities pass through our comic books. We want it to be the world outside your windows that readers see every day. And that includes, different races, different sexual orientations, people from all walks of life. Marvel was the first company to introduce a black superhero. We were the first company to introduce a gay superhero. So we take what's going on in the real world and put that into our comics and have it reflect what people know from their daily lives. Great characters, great creators equals great stories. It's a simple philosophy that we've long lived by and that we've taken from the comics and transitioned into TV, into animation, and then most recently into a successful film studio. So, after the Marvel age and comics really hit and the line expanded in the 70s and 80s, we started branching out into TV. Some of you may recognize some of these shows. There was a live-action Spider-Man show in the 70s, followed by the one that most people do know, Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby in the live-action Incredible Hulk show, which ran for 2 seasons. On the bottom left over here, we have Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which was one of our biggest gateways to get kids into the Marvel Universe. It aired on Saturday mornings. It was one of the most highest-rated shows when it aired. And then over on the right-hand side was an early Fantastic Four cartoon. The one interesting thing about the Fantastic Four cartoon is that you see the Thing, Reed Richards, and Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman, but who's missing is the Human Torch. And you see a little robot there. His name was Herbie. There's a great urban legend about this, is that I just found out recently it wasn't true. The going theory was that they took the Human Torch out of the Fantastic Four cartoon because of the FCC in the United States. They felt that Marvel Comics tended to be inspirational and aspirational, and they didn't want a guy on fire to inspire kids to douse themselves in gasoline and set themselves on fire. And for the longest time, for myself even as well, that's been what people thought. It's recently been debunked, I found out, and the reason was that at this point, Stan Lee had moved out to the West Coast and was involved in a number of different licensing deals, and Marvel had actually licensed the the Human Torch off as a solo character. So when he licensed the animated series, the Human Torch wasn't available, so they had to put in Herbie to replace him. Then from animation and from TV series, we've moved into film. Now many of you know a lot of the Marvel films. You know the Avengers, the X-Men, Spider-Man. But what a lot of people forget is that Marvel's path to becoming the studio that we are today in film really began with Blade, with Wesley Snipes. A lot of people don't realize that this was a Marvel movie. It wasn't really played up at the time. It wasn't really promoted at the time. It was actually a license deal that Marvel made when we were bankrupt in the 90s. So Blade came out. It was a big hit in the States. That led to Blade 2, led to Blade 3, and it led to Marvel realizing that they have a vast catalog of characters that are going to be ripe for licensing to film. That led to a deal with 2 of our strongest partners that remain intact today, Fox and Sony. Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, X-Men, the Fantastic Four, Daredevil, Elektra, the Hulk. These were the ones that really got the ball rolling for us. Of course, Spider-Man broke box office records when it came out. The X-Men morphed into a billion-dollar franchise that still continues to this day. And then titles like Ghost Rider and Fantastic Four, while they might not be the box office hits compared to some of the other ones, are fantastic properties that we're going to continue to develop in film. And that's where Marvel did. Created a lot of the movies that you all know and love today. So Iron Man was the first self-produced film for us. A lot of people were surprised at the choice. They said, Iron Man, he's a B-level character at best. How could Marvel make a film with Iron Man? And again, we proved great characters, great creators, in this case being Robert Downey Jr. and the cast that they assembled, equals a great story. And it's kind of that field of dreams philosophy. If you build it, they will come. If you tell a good story, they will come. This was a story that told Iron Man's origin in the best, most exciting possible way, and it set box office on fire, it got fans clamoring again, and it proved to us, as a studio, that we had what it takes to put together an amazing film franchise. The films that you see here are what we call Phase 1. You know, in the comic books, you have a lot of interconnected storylines. You know, the characters come in and out of each other's books, and it's always cool when they team up. Why can't we do that as films? So he put together a slate of films, Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, all with the plan of knowing, as you know from the post-credit sequences of all these films, we're building to something bigger. And that film was, of course, The Avengers. Released earlier this year, just recently released on DVD, had the #1 opening weekend of all time, over $200 million, and at this point it sits as the #3 all-time grossing film worldwide. Couldn't be happier, especially with how it performed in Asia. It's been a real eye-opener here for a lot of fans. It's exceeded our expectations across the board. And coming up next, we're starting what we're calling Phase 2. So the Avengers capped Phase 1. Now we have what we're calling Phase 2. Iron Man 3 is the kickoff of that. It will be released April 25th here in Singapore, earlier than most other countries in the world. You guys are going to get a special treat and see it before everyone else. But what I have here is, I have a trailer for the film that I'd like to show you.
Got a lot of apologies to make. Nothing's been the same since New York. You experience things, and then they're over. I can't sleep. And when I do, I have nightmares. Honestly, there's 100 people who want to kill me. I hope I can protect the one thing I can't live without.
There is no such thing.
Excited? Yeah, it's great. Iron Man 3 is being directed by Shane Black, who did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. He also wrote the Lethal Weapon trilogy, A Long Kiss Goodnight, an extremely talented writer-director. It's being written by Shane along with Drew Pearce. It stars the original cast, Robert Downey Jr., Gwyneth Paltrow, Don Cheadle, and also Ben Kingsley will be coming in to play the villain in this film, who is the Mandarin. Can't say too much more than that. The film, like I said, picks up right after Avengers. It is the start of the phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it breaks Tony down, and it sees just how much a man can take, especially if you're a playboy philanthropist genius, as he likes to say. It said May 2013, but as I said, it'll be released early here in Singapore on April 25th. At this point, we're going to talk a little bit more about the film slate, the animation slate, and I have a couple more exciting things to show you. But my legs are getting tired, so what we're going to do is I'm going to sit down, and Nicholas and I are going to have a discussion, and we're going to go through a bunch of things with you, if you don't mind. So, Nicholas, you want to come up, and we can have a seat?
Okay, the first thing I want to ask after watching this really exciting trailer is, can we expect to see more Iron Man movies after this third installment? And will Robert Downey Jr. continue in the role?
You know, we love our relationship with Robert. He's been really the backbone of what we've been building. At this point, we're focusing on Iron Man 3, building up to Avengers 2. As to what the future holds, you know, we'll have to wait and see, but I don't think you're going to be seeing Iron Man go anywhere for quite a long time.
That's really good news. Okay, but what about Thor and Captain America? Can we expect, I know there's been announcements about sequels, but can we expect to see these movies continue beyond a trilogy?
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about those then. If we have a next slide, please. So, Thor, The Dark World. It's Thor 2, obviously, but rather than number it, we're giving a lot of our films subtitles for the Phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Thor is going to be The Dark World. It's coming out in November 2013. It's going to be directed by Alan Taylor, best known for his work on the TV series Game of Thrones. You guys know Game of Thrones? Yeah? All right. Fantastic show. The work that Alan's been doing on Thor has been incredible. It's currently shooting in England. And again, the original cast comes back. It's Chris Hemsworth, Anthony Hopkins, Natalie Portman, Tom Hiddleston as Loki, and it's going to take Thor and Odin to some places that they've never seen before.
I see. Okay, and you talked about, you mentioned Phase 2 just now,
Yep.
which Kevin Feige talked about at length at Comic-Con as well.
Yep.
What can you tell us about Phase 2?
All right, well, Phase 2 is kind of taking what we did with Phase 1 and taking it to the next level. Really building on the universe that we've created over the course of the first 6 films, doing it with our next 6 films. Starting, again, with Iron Man 3, then we're going into Thor, The Dark World. If we can get the next slide, please. We're going to have next year, April 2014, is the third film in Phase 2, which is going to be Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Does anyone here read a lot of the Marvel comics? Yeah? People know who the Winter Soldier is? The Winter Soldier is a classic storyline written by Ed Brubaker and art by Steve Epting in the comics that is going to be the basis for the plot of the second Captain America movie. As we're about a year and a half out at this point, I really can't say too much. But if you want to get some clues, you should look to the Captain America Winter Soldier storyline to find out where we might be going with some of the characters. And again, that will be Chris Evans returning to reprise his role as Steve Rogers' Captain America.
You know, I mean, you mentioned that Phase 2 is going to be 6 more movies.
Yep.
I think by some estimates, the movies based on Marvel characters that have been released already have grossed about $5 billion. The Avengers alone made $1.5 billion this summer. But, you know, not to sound sacrilegious, but will the bubble ever burst?
You know, it's a question that we've been asking ourselves for as long as we can remember, especially even when it came to comics. How much is too much? You know, how far can you go? And at this point, I think the answer, honestly, is no. You know, you see a lot of superhero movies coming out. Some succeed and some fail, but when they're well done, like all the Marvel movies I like to think have been, you get the kind of numbers that we've been bringing in. So I just think that the trend will continue, and that as people get to know and love these characters, as long as we keep producing amazing films, do not think the bubble will burst.
I see. Well, I understand there's going to be Guardians of the Galaxy movie in the works as well.
Yes, there is a Guardians of the Galaxy movie in the works. I actually don't have a slide for that, so I'm sorry. It really is just in pre-production. We've hired James Gunn, who's the writer-director of the film. It's just really begun starting on it. We don't even really have a logo. We've started on some initial concept design. But it's based on another Marvel series, maybe a lesser-known series for some people. They might not be as familiar with Guardians of the Galaxy. But it's a kind of touching on the sci-fi aspect of the Marvel Universe.
I see. Well, I mean, besides these characters, the Thor and Captain America sequels, Guardians of the Galaxy, I know there's going to be an Ant-Man movie as well.
Yes.
But are there any other Marvel characters we can expect to see on the big screen in the future?
You know, those are the ones that we've announced for Phase 2 now. It's a pretty aggressive slate that's taking us through the end of 2015. So, you know, Ant-Man is the one I think also that people, I don't have a slide for, that I think people are kind of like, whoa, Ant-Man, what's happening with him? He's coming out after the Avengers movie. How does he fit into the Phase 2? And the answer is, I don't even have the answers to those questions, to be honest. That's something that Kevin and the guys out at Marvel West have planned. But for now, taking us up to the end of 2015 is where we've announced. Going forward, yes, Marvel has a catalog of over 8,000 original characters, and I think we'll be tapping into that to come up with some other films in the future, but it's just too early to tell at this point.
I see. Okay, right now I want to talk a little bit about Marvel's animation division.
Sure.
So I understand, I mean, you mentioned just now in 1966, you have the first, Marvel's first foray into animation. Now, up to the late 80s, you've only got Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and the Avengers making it onto the small screen. But by the 90s, you get a hugely popular X-Men series. And I understand...
That's an X-Men series that we credit with bringing more female viewers and, in turn, readers into the Marvel Universe than anything we've produced previously.
I see. So that was a real groundbreaker.
Yes, it was for us.
So currently, I believe there's a TV series based on the Ultimate Spider-Man comic being developed.
Yep.
And also 2 series based on the Hulk and the Avengers.
Yep.
Yeah. So is there a clip can you show us for Ultimate
Yeah,
Spidey?
I think we have one. Can we go to the next slide? We'll skip that one, go to the next one. Okay, if we could, we'll come back to that. All right, here we go. So, Marvel's Ultimate Spider-Man. It's on Disney XD, also now here in Asia. And I do think we have a clip, so if we could hit the next slide, I think the clip will start.
My name's Peter Parker, and I'm Spider-Man. My life was turned upside down when the super spy Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. told me that if I wanted to be the ultimate amazing me, I would have to school a bunch of new guys. He said that? When did he say that?
You and all 4 of them could learn to be the next generation of great heroes. The next Avengers.
I like this guy. Avengers assemble! Avengers disassemble! Avengers assemble! Again! Oh, awesome!
Steve Rogers, by the way.
The Mighty Thor! Hulk? Here? In Manhattan? Can I get some backup here?
Your bravery is admirable.
This isn't really how I pictured our first team up. Ah!
Go, fetch Son of Cole.
Son of Cole? You mean Coulson?
Acting Principal Coulson. Flip, flip.
Hulk-like Bugman.
He is the man of spiders.
Smart kid. Maybe with a little guidance.
There could be some future Avengers here. If you all stay out of trouble.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So that's Ultimate Spider-Man, now airing on Disney XD. It's been a very successful first season for us, so much so that we've gone into production on season 2.
I see.
And forgive my AFT, ATF flub there.
It's all right. I was just wondering, where do the Marvel animated series fit in terms of bridging the gaps between the movies and the comic books?
It's really important for us. At Marvel, we always walk a fine line because we have such a long history dating back to the 30s that we have people who have been reading our comics literally for 70 years. And Marvel continuity has grown over those years. The problem is that sometimes that continuity becomes so impenetrable that new readers have a tough time finding a way into the Marvel universe. They go and see our films, and they come to try to get into our comic books, and they just don't understand the continuity. So it's a constant struggle that we have to walk the line between being new reader friendly and respecting the generation and the continuity that's come before. The animated series are a great in-between step for that. It's for a lot of kids who go and see the Spider-Man film, they come out, they might not be too interested in reading comic books. Kids these days, it's all about video games. But one of the things that we find is that the animated series serve as a great bridge between the movies and the comics, going both ways, you know, coming from people who've seen the films who want to get into the comics, or people who read the comics who want to, you know, take the next step get something a little bit more out of Marvel. And that's what the animation does for us. It really services that gap.
But is there a danger of fans, especially the newer ones, getting confused by the history of the characters, given that the comics, the movies, the TV series all tell divergent stories?
Yeah, there is that fear, but I think at this point, especially, kids who have come up in different generations, who are used to different characters from different TV shows and different mediums, have gotten used to that. Especially with the Marvel Universe, they've become accustomed to the fact that, there are a couple different Spider-Man. It's still Peter Parker, but this is kind of the Spider-Man you grow up with. This is the Spider-Man you graduate to. This is another Spider-Man that's a little bit more for my taste. So we try to hit all the audiences that way.
I see. But will we ever get Marvel television or animated division elsewhere in the world to tell stories of local versions of Marvel characters, like say Spider-Man India for XD India, or a Captain Britain TV show?
It's something that we definitely keep in mind and something that we are working on. I can't say more beyond that, but Asia is a very important market for us. We've had, especially in the comic division, some Asian heroes who have become very prominent and some who have not become as prominent, who have been kind of forced to, fit into the stories. And we've taken that as a learning process, and now we're working with a lot of our partners, especially Disney here in Asia, to develop some content that we think will be appropriate for audiences here, starting from children of a young age. And again, I really can't say too much more than that.
All right. Okay.
But, one other area we are expanding in, Marvel's been known traditionally to do 2D animation from back in the day. We really never touched on 3D. But we do have a new 3D project that we are developing, and if you don't mind, I brought a clip of that as well.
Sure.
I think if we could skip ahead 2 slides, please. Right here. So we're doing an Iron Man versus Hulk Heroes United original film. It's a 3D CG film, and I think we have the clip here. If we could hit play.
Maybe I shouldn't have built so many mandroids.
You think?
Now! Oh, could use a little smash right about now. Thanks. I think you only broke 2 or 3 ribs. Get off me!
In battle, power overcomes speed, sir. Please surrender.
Next time, I'm programming less smack talk. You big ape!
All right. So as I said, we just hit the next slide. I think the logo is going to come up. All right, cool. We're all set now. Thanks. Yeah, it's coming out April 2013. It's our first CG movie produced by Jeff Loeb, who's one of our top writers as well as the head of Marvel Television. And as you can see, the Hulk's taken on many different formats in the film and in the films and in the comics and in the animated series. But here we're really basing it on the Hulk from the Avengers movie that Mark Ruffalo and the animation team really brought to life. So.
You got to stop showing us such awesome stuff.
All right, well, unfortunately, that's the last clip.
Well, the audience can't take it. I can't take it. But okay, we're going to talk a little bit about Marvel video games now.
Sure.
So I understand Marvel has released more than 100 video games since 1982. So one game that's currently in development is Deadpool.
Deadpool,
Yeah.
yes.
Is there anything you can tell us about that?
It's a character that many people might not know. He was seen in the last Wolverine movie, played by Ryan Reynolds. It was a different version than you see in the comics. But Daredevils really are kind of crazy, foul-mouthed, irreverent character. And the game really reflects that. He's a mercenary. He's a hitman. But he has a sense of humor to him that fans love. And the game really captures the more violent aspect of his personality, as well as the humor that we so know and love with the character.
But does Marvel produce its own video games?
We have a video game division that oversees the production with our partners. So we do most, Activision is one of our main partners, and like we've done games with Electronic Arts. So we use a number of different partners, but we have a video game division that kind of oversees everything from a story character point of view.
I see. Well, going back to Iron Man 3, I understand a video game is usually released in conjunction with each new Marvel movie.
Yes.
So can we expect an Iron Man 3 video game?
Yeah, we can usually expect to see a Marvel video game based on the characters around the time of releases. One of the most successful having been Wolverine, which was a wonderful game. And you'll just see different games roll out in console format, and also certain things that we're experimenting with online, like the Avengers Alliance game, like you see on Facebook.
I see. Okay, I want to move on now to Marvel's digital strategy.
Perfect.
So, I guess the obvious question to ask is, what is Marvel doing about the declining readership of comics as a whole?
It's difficult. Comics really are a roller coaster in terms of sales. It really goes up and down. Whereas the films, licensing, video games, everything has been growing. Comic books, for most of our history, has been a bit of a roller coaster. And it's funny because we always see comics as the heart that drives blood into the Marvel body. So the comic division kind of pumps everything, the ideas, the IP, the creative, juice, so to speak, into the movie division, the game division, the licensing division. They pull all their inspiration from the history of Marvel. But without publishing, the kind of body would almost fall apart. That said, comic book sales have never been as steady as some of the other divisions. So in terms of our digital strategy, what we're doing is pretty broad. I think, as most companies know, no one knows exactly what's going to work in digital just yet. It's kind of a throw it at the wall and see what sticks approach. And sometimes you have success and sometimes you have failure. And that's just kind of what we've been doing. We've had wonderful success of late with our digital comics program, the Marvel Digital Comics Universe Online, with day-and-date downloadable comics, and also with a new initiative called Infinite Comics, which are basically for the iPad where you can control the flow of the comics. It's still a comic book, but the storytelling you control by tapping. And that's been a real eye-opener for us that we're going to continue and really expand in 2013.
I see. But how real is the danger of digital content cannibalizing print?
I truly believe that we will never lose print, especially where comics are concerned. And there's two big reasons for that, is that while comics is about reading, people always forget that there's two other things about comics that are extremely important, that they're collectible and that there's a community that's built around them. And that's just as important for us. The person who bought Amazing Fantasy 15, who bought Fantastic Four #1, who bought X-Men #137, they've been building their library. They're completists, and they start collecting everything. So we'll always have to keep publishing books because the collectors will keep buying. The other thing is, comics are just as much about community. Even when we see so with the films, you go every week to your comic book shop, and you're there to talk to your friends, to talk to the shop owner, to buy them. You're part of that energy of when the comics go on sale. The same thing with the films. Most Marvel films are seen in groups. People go to see them with their friends, because after they leave, they talk about them. They debate about Thor and Hulk. With the Thing, you've done that. Why would Wolverine act like that? They go to bars, and it's all about the community of Marvel. And that's why I think that our comics will always have a print component to them, no matter how far digital expands.
So no danger of Marvel ever going fully digital?
I don't think so, no.
I see. Okay, well, right here in Singapore, comics are easily available in libraries. You can go to any neighborhood library and get hold of a lot of the most of the recent releases.
Yep.
Is it the same in the United States?
Not so much. Libraries do stock Marvel comics. They do carry them more in the graphic novel format. But it's not as widespread as I understand it is here in Singapore, which is unfortunate.
I see. Okay, a comic book now costs between $3 and $4 for a 20-page publication. How do you think publishers will be able to compete with video games and online games if they are pricing themselves in such a fashion?
Yeah, it's hard. That's one of the things that we're constantly struggling with ourselves, especially in our pricing in a digital medium. We would like to experiment with price points, but the fact of the matter is that we have a certain production cost. We have to pay our writers a certain amount. We have to pay our artists a certain amount. And when it comes to Marvel, like I said earlier, we hire some of the greatest creators on the planet, and some of those creators don't come cheap. So we constantly have to make our, cover our nut to make sure that we can continue publishing. So that has unfortunately led to a price increase. The same with paper costs have gone up, ink costs have gone up. So we're constantly fighting that battle about how we can keep prices down and compete with video games. A kid can buy a video game, play a video game, $50, play a video game for hours. He buys a comic book for $4, and he reads it in 5 minutes, and it's not something that provides that constant entertainment for many children. They want to be constantly doing new things. So it's just a question that we constantly struggle with, but we don't have the answer to. Online we've been trying different digital strategies for pricing. We're going to continue to do so, but there's no set answer just yet for us or many of the publishers.
But what is the typical print run for a comic these days?
The typical print run, an average sales, a best-selling comic sells over 100,000 copies. Let's put it that way. The average comic probably goes between 45 to 50,000 units, I would say.
I see. Okay, so...
Which isn't big compared to other forms of entertainment, even book publishing.
I see. Okay, and I wanted to ask us as well, what is Marvel doing to reach out to its audience here in Asia?
Like I said, we do have a couple projects in the works that are going to, we're developing and producing specifically for the audience here. As far as what we're doing in comics, we do have a couple more Asian heroes have been debuting. We have a specific eye on that. Recently, we've seen a couple more Asian writers come in. And like I said, Marvel is the world outside your window. And when those writers come to us, they want to reflect the world that they grew up in, which is from Asian families or growing up with Asian friends. And we've seen more Asian characters start being debuted in the Marvel Universe in a natural way. And I think that trend is going to continue as well, as we continue to hire more writers on a global scale.
But I understand parts of Iron Man 3 were also made in China.
Yes.
And that's the same for the Wolverine as well, was it?
Yes. Iron Man 3 parts are going to be, yes, exactly, filmed in China. I don't know the production schedule just yet. And parts of Wolverine, the Wolverine from Fox have been filmed in Japan, large parts of it.
I see. Okay, great. I think we want to take some questions now.
Sure, we've got about 10 minutes left. How do we want to do this? Do you want to turn on the lights and you guys can raise your hands, or, there we go. Look at all your smiling faces. You're not bored yet, are you?
The gentleman over there?
Hi. Being fortunate enough to grow up through Spidey and his amazing friends, I saw throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, not so much with the animation, but especially the filmed entertainment, Marvel and the other properties in DC tended to deviate from what made the comics so popular to begin with, changing characters and things like that. The question I had was, in observing the recent phenomenon like you talked about, where sort of going back to those original stories, was that a really conscious decision in a way to trust the original popularity of the characters? Because you keep mentioning people involved throughout Marvel that are also writers in the comics themselves.
Yeah. No,
and,
there was
one last thing, very excited about seeing Rocket Raccoon on the big screen.
Long-time reader, I love it. Yes, there is a character named Rocket Raccoon, and he is a raccoon, and he will be appearing in Guardians of the Galaxy film. But to answer your question, yeah, there was definitely a concerted effort, especially as we took control of more of our own properties in animation and in film, to make sure that they really reflect the core stories and the core values that you found in the original Marvel comics. And one of the ways we achieve that is that Marvel Publishing, most of Marvel operations are run out of New York City, where I'm based. Marvel Studios is out of LA in Manhattan Beach. And one of the things we have is we have a creative committee. It's made up of some of the creative executives from the Marvel Publishing office, some of our top writers, and then some of the film executives and producers, who are a committee that meets via teleconference, via phone conference, very regularly, meet in person about once a month to go over everything Marvel, everything that we're producing, to make sure that everything works in terms of what has come before, what we plan to do, how we can respect the fans, how we can appeal to new audiences. And it's having these guys who are true fans themselves, but who also understand the business aspect of things, where we've been able to find that balance and really bring back the kind of original flavor of the Marvel Comics to the different properties that we expand into more multimedia genres. Thank you for asking.
The gentleman there, at the back.
Hi, I just wanted to ask you a bit about, the difference between Marvel Cinematic Universe and what DC is coming out with. And you can see there's been a lot of home runs being hit with the MCU. Not so much with DC. I mean, apart from the Dark Knight trilogy, you know, Superman and Green Lantern have all sort of failed. Any reason why you can think that is?
I honestly don't know. I really can't speak to DC's strategy. You know, one of the things, and this is you know, just me talking off the cuff here, is just what I answered, that Marvel has kind of this creative committee where we respect everything. And we're not looking to make good superhero movies. Marvel's philosophy is to make a good movie with superheroes. And sometimes I feel that DC has not embraced that strategy. And again, I'm not speaking ill of them. I love all my friends at Warner Brothers, and I love so many of the films that they've put out. But sometimes I get the feeling that they're trying to make good superhero movies more so than actually make good films. The films seem to be lacking a little of emotional heart, in my opinion. And this is me speaking as freely as a fan. So, and I think that's changing. I mean, the Dark Knight films really got it. You know, really, what Nolan did was phenomenal. And from what I understand from the new Superman film, the Man of Steel is going to be just amazing. And they're really capitalizing on what we've done. Marvel and DC tend to drive each other in all genres, particularly in comics and moving into film. And they've always excelled, especially in animation and in video games. And we've kind of taken a cue from them in a lot of those regards as we've moved. And I think now what you can see is that they're really looking at what we've done in film and really looking to do what we've done. So I think you're going to be seeing a really good slate of superhero movies coming from both studios, from both publishers, and even when we get out into some of the smaller films, you know, that are based on superhero properties, that people are using Marvel as the model to base a lot of what they're doing on.
For the TV audience, especially with the S.H.I.E.L.D. TV series that's just been announced?
Sure. TV is something that we've long wanted to get into. Live action TV. You know, we've had success over, you know, in the past. We really haven't had a hit of late in the television genre. Again, we have the Marvel Television Division run by Jeff Loeb, and it's been announced that S.H.I.E.L.D. is our first series. The pilot is going into production. They're in casting right now. Joss Whedon is, you know, signed on to executive produce. His brother is going to be show running. And we've got about 6 or 7 of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents cast at this point. I'm not very heavily involved in the production, so I really can't speak too much to it. But I understand that the script is phenomenal, and it's going to be going to Lens very soon. So we'll have to wait and see. But Avengers for us is kind of just the first step in what we hopefully will see is a Marvel TV universe as well.
Okay, let's take an SMS question. Phase 1 started from a collection of great comics from 1939. How do you plan to create, if not similar, greater impact for Phase 2?
Again, it's kind of just going back to that core philosophy. It's, you know, hire the greatest creators or the greatest actors, the greatest directors, the greatest screenwriters, you know, pair them with our library of great characters, pull on the great stories that have come before, and hopefully just really use what the visual medium has given us, where special effects has taken us, and take what's on the page and really blow it up, you know. Film used to have the problem in that people always said that comics, the only thing that was limiting it was your imagination, because you could draw anything you thought of. And film, you couldn't do that. Some of the early Fantastic Four movies by Corman and some of the older live-action films prove that. But now with special effects, there's no limit to really what you can do. You can do just what you do on comic and CGI. So I think that that's really what's going to really keep propelling all superhero movies, especially the Marvel movies, to be bigger and better.
See. Okay, any more questions from the audience? Yes, the lady over there.
Sure. Okay. Oh, yeah, we're bringing you the mic. One sec. There you go.
I was just curious, what is your revenue pie looking like, the streaming, in terms of you're quite transmedia, or so it seems. What does it look like in percentage?
And I'm not trying to blow this question off, but I am a lowly creative guy. I do not have any involvement in anything financial.
What does the most, for example, and then, you know, what is your priority, for example?
You know, I think it's pretty obvious at this point that the films do very well for us. I believe that our consumer products and licensing division probably might be the most profitable. Again, I really don't know. I work, you know, mainly in comics, and I know that we're at the bottom of that chart, unfortunately. But you know, we do all right for ourselves at Marvel.
Okay. Another question from the lady in front.
All right, one more, and I think we're going to have to wrap it up. Okay, will we ever see the Human Torch fight alongside Captain America? In the immediate future, probably not. Marvel is producing the Captain America film. He's part of our universe. The Fantastic Four universe at this point is being developed continually by Fox in film. So, we won't see the universes cross over anytime soon, unfortunately. You might be an old school Invaders Captain America fan. Yeah, that's true. Chris Evans kind of fighting himself. But, you can see the Cap and Human Torch fight pretty regularly in the comic book universe every month, so.
It might be a bit too surreal. Chris Evans versus Chris Evans.
Exactly.
Maybe we can take one more question.
One more? Okay.
Yeah. Right, the lady at the back.
In creating, a character's story across multiple platforms, is there like a core creative team that oversees this rollout so there's consistency and a flow to the stories that goes from the comics to the TV to the movies? Or is it more a case of just separate teams who just have to coordinate very closely to make sure that they tell the same story?
It's a little from column A and a little from column B. Things kind of come out both ways. Sometimes our creative committee or some of our editors or someone at Marvel will have an idea about how things should fit or where things should develop. And we kind of run with that. Other times, there's outside people, outside teams, an outside writer, will come to us with different ideas that we then bring in and shepherd creatively. So we really can't say, it's definitely this way or it's 100% created this way. It's a little bit of everything. It's taking good ideas from wherever we get them and developing them in the Marvel way.
All right, I think that's all the time we have. Please give it up for
Thank you
Cebulski.
everyone for coming.